So Jeff, I was hoping you
Okay,
might be able
great.
to share with us a little bit about, some information for our families.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you everyone for giving up some of your time to me and the city. My name is Jeff Tumkitikasem. I'm actually the director for the Mayor's Office of Operations. And our office broadly coordinates a lot of interagency efforts. Since the onset of COVID, I've been the testing lead for the city. Um, to expand capacity, explore kind of the different options around it, working with kind of both academic, the health professionals as well, to kind of pull together a lot of the efforts around new testing, expanding testing options across the city. I wanted to take a little bit of time here just to talk a little bit through kind of the testing operations that we now have within our schools, which we feel are pretty vital to ensuring that we've got safe school reopenings. I just will go through a little bit of history just to give everyone a bit of context, because things have changed as we've reopened amidst a bit more broad citywide increase in positivity. When we first set this out, we all worked with people within the administration and with several of our partners across the city, as well as consistently talked to representatives across the state in other municipalities, and starting to really take a look at what would be possible to create a safe environment for reopening schools. We took a lot of examples from the international community as well. A lot has been done in Europe and in Asia as well, in other countries, and so took a look at their models. What I wanted to paint a picture for you is kind of what we are doing now, and start first by saying that we developed a prevalence survey testing program. And I want to be clear on that because there have been some misconceptions. The point of the testing operations within the school system is not, in fact, to test every single individual, but to identify and test a percentage of staff and students to understand prevalence throughout the entire year. It would identify broadly what that prevalence was for the entire school system, but also take a look at individual schools, by borough, by school districts, allow us to cut that information in different ways. Obviously, what you've heard in the news, and we're very happy about, is that all of the different safety protocols have proven that, at least in that first tranche, and at least in the initial information we've gotten the last 2 days, is that schools remain safe with a very low positivity rate. We ended, before we closed back in November, at about 0.27%. And that was the positivity in our schools. In our last day of school testing, when we reopened, and just that first day, we were still in that ballpark at 0.3%. So things remain hopeful. I want to walk through then that we moved from a monthly testing to a weekly to account for the fact that things are a bit more, positivity is higher. But again, because we were looking at prevalence, we are not trying to attempt to identify every single individual. It's really so we can take actions broadly. When we do identify positives, we have strict protocols that allow for the closure of schools to investigate. If there are any two unlinked cases, then the school is closed. If they are linked, it is a little bit easier to isolate simply the pod. The example is simply that you might have two cases, but they are actually a brother and sister. You can link them to the same family, so it isn't something that we have to kind of concern ourselves with broad transmission. The contacts are identified through our test and trace program, and any follow-ups from those, we bring at-home test kits to any of the contacts if they need it, but we also encourage them to go get tested themselves. So the program is basically put out by, we have basically brought on 3 providers. They are 3 providers who have an extensive history in testing. One is BioReference, most popularly at least. They helped us with the Health and Hospitals program in the very beginning. Most popularly, they recently have been basically doing the testing for the NBA bubble and the NFL. We also brought on SOMAS Community Partners. They are a community provider that is very deep within the communities of Northern Manhattan and in Brooklyn. A particular focus on pediatric doctors and nurses. And they're usually trilingual, if at least bilingual, in Spanish and in Mandarin. We also brought in Fulgent for another provider. They have done a lot of work in advancing kind of new technologies around testing. They advanced the first at-home test kit. We're not using it here, but just to give you that level set. Each of those teams is essentially assigned a number of schools, and we have kind of basically put together weekly schedules. We have in fact actually oversampled, we overschedule Monday through Thursday, because we do know that demand has been super high since we reopened schools. More staff and students actually want to get tested than we identify. We usually send out a list that comprises 20% of student and staff. And so we, test those people. And then essentially when principals and other students, school staff want more testing, we stay to test them. And we have been regularly testing, double or triple the basic 20% because of demand. That's not because we actually assign that. It's actually because other people want to come down and get tested while our teams are there. So that has been hopefully very helpful. We have been doing a lot of that testing. All the reports out of results are within 24 to 48 hours. 86% of the results that we get are within 24 hours. There have been a couple of, I think, less than 2% that actually have fallen out of that window because of a retest, or there was some inconclusive nature and they had to rerun the test. All of the information that is collected from those tests is saved for about 5 days just to make sure that there aren't questions, but then kind of destroyed. There's no samples left over or kept. I know that that was a question about some of this testing. And these are all providers that have worked within the communities well before they did any testing with the city or with the Department of Education. And a lot of the results, we very much proactively, if there are positives, make active pursuits to call and identify the people immediately that they're positive. For all the negatives, anybody who's tested or given information about a portal they can go to. They can also call the situation room or call for results from the providers themselves to get their negative results. But ultimately, if you haven't received an active phone call, it means you're negative, and we're really kind of focusing on identifying the positives and then doing the tracing from there. So this is a program that right now is running through our K through elementary. To be very clear, it only tests the students for grades 1 through 5. We are not testing the students for kindergarten and pre-K, but we are testing their staff. We'll be moving on to D75's students and staff on Monday. And obviously, we're working to build up capacity so that we can also reopen middle schools with the same testing protocols. I would just add that the testing is a main focus of what I'm talking about, because that's kind of what I have been leading up for both the city and for the school. But it is supposed to work in concert with all of the other safety protocols that we put in place in terms of social distancing, mask, just kind of the cohorts. And as we move towards different configurations of the class, those are all added to what this testing is, which is one of many different protocols they've put in place. And I think all of you are more familiar with that than even me, but wanted to speak to the fact that this testing strategy is only supposed to work in concert with all of the other efforts that are in place, which is why we can see when positivity is low. Any kind of spikes that we see within the community are not yet directly translating, particularly on the younger school, because there's been less kind of, younger children kind of move within their family unit and they don't kind of have the access. In terms of the national studies, certainly there's a lot more transmission at the higher grades where people might not stay within their stricter family unit, high schools being, and then college being a totally separate thing where people are interacting more often. And so there seems to be more transmission there. And then finally, I will just kind of conclude with, you know, I feel certainly strongly, I think a lot of people at the DOE and the city, that this testing protocol is important for safety. And it really requires a lot of your participation in terms of getting in the consents. I know there's a big push this before and this entire week to get consent in. So I would just kind of close with kind of just making that request that staff and parents all get their consents in. It's the way that we can kind of really understand what the prevalence is. It's our ability to say that it is different than the community transmission right now. And it is also our ability to kind of make adjustments for each individual school, for whole districts, and for other, even borough-wide if necessary, if we see trends moving in the opposite direction. And knock on wood, right now, that's not what we're seeing. So all of that consent is available on the DOE website in multiple languages. We truly encourage people to get on there and sign that consent so we have that. And I'll certainly, on my side, continue to work on advancing and improving on the testing program we have from the beginning, moving from monthly to this weekly, making it easier, and also making sure that the reporting is faster. So thank you all again for your time. I'm happy to take any questions, but I really appreciate your ability to kind of give some time for me to explain all of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I know we do have a couple council members that would like to ask questions, so appreciate
Sure.
you willing to take them. I'll call Adele and then Vito and Yifeng after that.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for coming. And so the way you make the consent sound, it sounds like it's optional, but we know that parents have basically been strong-armed that they can't return to in-school learning unless they sign this form. Is that accurate, or is it optional?
No, it is mandated. I think that what I meant is essentially that we were asking for all parents to provide their consents before their children return to school or on the day that they return to school, because we have had some cohort days, people hadn't had their first day. So we're still pushing for anyone before they go in for their first day. And as well, if you haven't, and if you can, before your child returns, then do it. But at some point, then those children will be moved to remote. Yes.
So the question I have to ask then in this whole process, and this is what's been very difficult for parents,
Sure.
that we were not in any way consulted in the formulation of this plan. Parents have requested repeatedly that they be allowed to go to their own provider because, particularly with young children, they don't want to relinquish their authority over their children or their guidance over their children in such what could be a traumatic experience. No matter what you say, this is something that parents are very, very, very concerned about. So
Sure.
why can't parents, especially if you have biomedical lab coming to you, why are parents still being refused the opportunity? And I can understand protocols, et cetera, but in considering, particularly since the CDC themselves say it's not a good idea to implement this type of program in the school because of parent concerns over who is looking over their children when applying medical tests. What is the reasoning other than logistics? What is the reasoning that would say that it's okay for parents to give up this sort of guidance for their children and put children in this situation?
Sure. There are 3 points. The first is, as I explained in the beginning, part of the thing that we are trying to do is a prevalence study. And the point of the prevalence is to make sure you know exactly when the tests are happening in what area. A lot of times when in the beginning, before we opened schools, we made available a lot of testing in the community and also invited people to kind of get tested in their own practitioners. But that doesn't work for the prevalence testing because you want a point in time when the test is conducted and when you get those results and it's consistent, so you know exactly what's happening in that school. A lot of times you don't know exactly when people are tested, and you can send in a test result, but also there's no way to then actually kind of record that and make sure for our own analysis that that's available. That's a kind of a skirting the line, totally admit. Part of it is the logistics of the reporting, but part of it really is about knowing at a single point in time when that test is happening, in what school and what population. That's one. The second is I actually had not, heard that there was any strict guidelines on the CDC. We've looked pretty consistently to the CDC, including, several of our staff had talked to both on the federal level and at the state level, talking about the school testing program. And we have not seen anything that kind of pushes against the fact that an in-school testing program, if anything, we have had, and I certainly have had many conversations with several municipalities across the country who are wondering how we stood this up and how they can learn from us to do the in-school testing. That's the gold standard that they want to put in place. And then the third thing is we have seen from other countries in standing up some programs like this, that the idea of actually doing the testing in program also ensures we know exactly what type of tests are running, because now there are a lot of different tests out there, from antigen to PCR, that we want to make sure we exactly know what type of test, because there are a lot of questions out there about what individual practices are using, and they're not always clear about what results are coming from what type of test. So by operating within the school, within 3 providers that all have the same tests, we know that the results are coming, that are consistent across any test that we're doing within the schools.
Okay, but to rebut, at least a month ago, it was very clearly stated on the CDC website that this type of testing is very difficult to apply to a school setting because of infrastructure difficulties and concerns of parents. And it does say that very specifically. And we did forward that to Central, that link.
Yeah.
But more considerately, especially again, had parents been considered more carefully in this equation, and again, because of CDC guidance, why aren't we using tents outside of the school so that parents have the option of a walk up to be near their child, so that they do have the ability to be there, and you can still have your protocol in place? And plus, it's more compliant with CDC guidance.
I would just say 2 things on that one. One, obviously on the tenting, as the weather gets worse and we're planning for something that's kind of across the, we have had to shut down outside tents for community testing because of weather. And that consistency we want to make sure is available to all of the school testing, because we're doing it so frequently every week. And again, on the CDC side guidance, we have had updated conversations with the state and the federal government on this. And the in-school testing is, fine. From there, I would look again. I'll look just to make sure. I don't want to kind of deny, but there's from an updated standpoint, they have not, had any problems with kind of an in-school. I'm sure they're recognizing parents' concern. I think that's right, but there isn't a logistic or infrastructure kind of concern they have. It is hard. They did say it would be hard, and that's why a lot of municipalities and states are calling us to say, how did you do it? We want to do it. They said it was hard, but they didn't say don't do it because it was hard.
No, but they do. And again, I'm an academic, so I trust me. Sorry, I appreciate it. I'm not sure if I'm still in the same place where we're not getting the answers. And my parents are really.
I would love to give the answer. That just that this is why we designed it and how we designed it. I'm happy to answer any more on that.
Again, why haven't parents?
And then Alan, just for the sake of time, because we have a lot on the agenda,
Sure.
and then maybe we'll circle back. So Vito, Yifeng posted a question on Read Out Loud, then Alan. Thanks, Del.
Thank you, Jeff. Just for clarity, could you please tell me what your title is and which office are you from?
Yeah, I'm a director for the Mayor's Office of Operations.
So do you have a medical background? What's your background? It's not medical. It's policy. Are you an attorney? What is your background? Oh,
no, my background actually is as, an operator. My whole point is to take the different policies, concepts, and other things and to operationalize them. My role within the city often is to essentially take and work with kind of the different parties involved to kind of create a program that actually mixes those things. I work closely with, I'm on the test and trace leadership team. I work with, Dr. Jay Varma and Dr. Ted Long, as well as kind of for this purpose, with the labs, the Department of Education, Test and Trace, and the Department of Health and Human Services, kind of just to pull all that together for the execution of a testing program.
Great. Well, so thank you. So you have the mayor's ear. Yes, you have the mayor's ear.
I mean, insofar as I work for him, yes.
So look, I just want to be reasonable. I have parents that just want to be reasonable. And again and again and again, we come back to a very simple ask. I would like to ask the mayor and you and whoever it is that can make this very simple decision to just try to allay the fears of parents who are anxious about their small child being handled by a stranger. And we could do it 20 different ways. We could set up a small isolation room in the front. Honestly speaking, there's drive-in testing that they do some places. We could go out with an umbrella to shield a child and the parent could wave from 8 feet away. If you just think outside the box, we could give parents who are very, very anxious and very, very concerned about this, rightly or wrongly, it's not for any of us to say what another person's anxiety level, especially with their children, is appropriate. So I'd like to ask you to just convey to whoever you have to convey this to, that all we're looking for is a reasonable accommodation for parents who want to be in the vicinity where their child is being tested. Now, if the child is positive, then the parent is probably positive. So I don't think having a parent in the vicinity puts anybody in any extra risk. And please, I think that if we just put our heads together, I think we really could come up with a reasonable protocol to accommodate these parents. Thank you.
I'll bring it back to the department. Yeah.
Thanks, Vito. Yifeng posted her question. Yifeng, do you want to ask it out loud, or do you want me
Yeah, I could ask out loud. So I understand that recently on December 8th, the steering committee sent out a letter. Basically, on the first item, I understand that the immunization records are being granted like extended deadline to December 11th. So I'm just wondering, like, will this, like, is that possible for this whatever deadline to be further extended? Because as you can see in the chat, like, especially for the remote students, like, some parents may not be comfortable for whatever reason. Like, if there's elderly at their house, right? They don't want to take their kids out to a medical facility during this pandemic time. And also, like, this also applies for regular vaccine shots, and then, like, wellness physical check. Like, is it possible those, like, requirements to be waived in order for the kids to be still, like, registered at the school? Because since it's 100% remote for the students, like, why take the resources away from the healthcare workers, and at the same time risk the students to unnecessary contaminations?
I will bring that back for the parental and kind of student side. I know from our doctors in the healthcare, they want to do the immunizations. So I don't know if they feel that it's a burden on their side, but I certainly will bring it back insofar as it might be a burden on kind of parents and students to kind of get it done.
Yeah, personally for myself, because, like, I have elderlies at my house, and then I'm keeping my kids inside, and we're doing 100% remote. All this because we don't want unnecessary risk, So I really hope you could bring this back to Mayor's office.
I will bring it back. I will also, though, just, both Dr. Shoksi and Dr. Long have pushed pretty hard that they want more immunization and other kind of vaccinations to happen sooner, just given kind of the weather turning. But I accept it. I will bring that back, at least for the parental concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Yifeng. And Alan, I think you're up.
Jeff, thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. I just want to say we're about to debate a resolution on this, and not everyone is of the same opinion in terms of perspective, in terms of the questions being asked. You partially answered my question about the importance of having a test that emits efficacy when it's a point in time. This is something a difference of perspective I have based on, I'm also an academic, and I think that you answered that quite well in terms of having a point in time test to ensure that it is a robust and valid, replicable and reliable study. That's what we do as researchers. But my question was, is it likely that the reason why we have such a low rate or lower rate is also something that I've noticed epidemiologists have pointed out. I noticed that in a poll, 75% of epidemiologists have said we should actually be closing down the school facilities. Is it because we're not testing enough? Or also, I want to give due credit to the principals and teachers and the staff who do an amazing job of keeping everyone safe. But if I can take the conversation elsewhere here, the question is the low positivity rate because we're not testing enough?
So based on what I've seen, I don't believe so, but only because I will also say this, we have considerably ramped up our testing. We had started at around 4,000 a day and are currently the last 2 days been testing almost 11,000 a day. So we have increased the testing and the positivity still is staying pretty low.
I don't know why that keeps, sorry, Jeff, you went mute. I don't know.
Sorry. Okay. I'm not sure where it cut off, Alan, but just basically that we have increased testing. The positivity has stayed low. Based on what we've seen so far, we don't see correlation in that more testing hasn't actually resulted in more positivity either.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more, Stephen, and then I'll just sum it up after that.
Sure. Jeff, can you just comment on how the city's testing policy overlaps, if at all, with the state's policy around schools in hot zones, orange and red zones? Just sort of some commentary on whether are there situations where the state is using its own providers and schools are getting tested in the same weeks or the same days. How does that overlap, if at all?
Yeah, so while we have coordinated with the state, it overlaps only in that we're doing more than the state has set as a basic standard. In their orange and red zones, whereas they said they required 20% testing per month, or red 30% per month, we're basically doing 20% per week. And the state is also requiring the testing in school within those zones. So the overlap is just that. I think we're doing more than that, and we're coordinating with the state, and they obviously see our data and we consult with them. When we reopened, we communicated to them our plan to make sure that regardless of what changes they might make, we did not want to close the schools and reopen them. So for consistency, we went above their basic requirement to ensure that even if they had to ratchet up, we were already in a ratcheted up space.
So you're coordinating so that there's not these situations where a school is getting hit on the same day or the same week. I mean, is that the kind of coordination you're talking about?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, actually, to be very honest with you, Stephen, state does not test in our schools. They provide materials for testing. So they provide a certain set of tests for any school that requires it. But because we're providing all the tests from a city standpoint, they don't need to. So we do offer those tests to kind of some of the private schools. The states work with them. They also give them to the upstate schools.
Okay. And basically, just so I make sure I heard you right, you're saying your rate of testing, the level that you're doing per week, automatically exceeds what the state might require for a red zone school. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank
They're
you.
30% per month. We're doing 20% per week.
And that's students and staff inclusive, right? Both of those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Jeff, just 2 points that came across.
Yes.
One was a question from one of our principals around translated letters about the testing. I think I understand that schools are translating the letters themselves, or they're working to get the letters translated. Is anything from your office coming out around translating the information around testing for families?
Yeah, I think that the DOE directly, not my office, but DOE directly is kind of expanding. I think that they had gotten into just the Spanish and Mandarin, but they were working on the other 6 major languages and working on that translation.
Yeah, you
But I
don't have
don't.
an idea of ETA.
I don't.
And-
I will find out for you though, but I don't.
And is there a specific office or someone principals or school leaders should follow up with to find out when that would be coming?
I would check directly right now with the first Deputy Chancellor's office, but I will definitely kind of make it known to them so they can get back to you directly.
Great.
And
Thanks.
should it be you, Dina?
Yeah, I mean, you CEC 20 or myself.
Okay, I'll go through Joseph.
Yeah, or
Joseph
Dr. O'Brien.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. And then just the one final wrap up thought, you've heard from council members, a lot of the concern maybe isn't around, the importance of the testing, but about parent access to their kids while they're getting tested. And as a CEC, we're trying to brainstorm through this resolution that we're presenting ways in which that need can be met for parents, especially ones that are really concerned about their children not having a good experience with the testing. One of the thoughts that we had was around FaceTiming parents. I mean, is there anything, to be present sort of virtually while their kids are being tested? Is there anything your office would be willing to entertain or, is entertaining around how parents can be present when their children are getting tested?
So, since we moved to the mandated testing, we haven't. And I'll just be honest, before, we had been very clear about saying that any test teacher that, this is a prevalence test. It's not meant to kind of test anybody who doesn't feel well or anything. And so we had encouraged kind of parents to go get their children tested, to their own providers and just if they needed it. Since the positivity has gone up and we've had to kind of institute this program, we have not kind of considered kind of the test parents on site, both logistically and kind of because of the basically program to move them in throughout the day. It hasn't been something that we could accommodate. From a FaceTime thing, I mean, I think we can try and figure out with the DOE centrally how that would work within the schools. It would be an effort that would really require more time, so fewer tests on the throughput level. It hasn't been something that we've seen as required. So obviously, in terms of allaying fear, we should consider it. Now, we'll certainly bring it back. I haven't thought of anything that would have kind of that in-person access, but certainly from a technical standpoint, if we can kind of guarantee some sort of connection on that and have people kind of readily available to receive those things, maybe it would work more as a try, and if not, then move forward, but we can take a look at it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Dr. O'Brien, did you have any final thoughts or wrap up for?
Yes, please. Absolutely. Once again, I really just want to thank Jeff for coming tonight and sharing with us this key information. It's so timely and so needed here in our district. And I really want to thank you for coming and taking the time out tonight.
Okay, so we have Diana Brogan for PTA.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to start by saying I'm disappointed as a parent that Jeff from the mayor's office is gone to not hear more clearly these parents' concerns. There's no issue here with clarity from the parents' perspective. I think the mayor's office needs a reminder that consent, when combined with a threat or a detrimental consequence for non-compliance, is not consent. That is coercion. Care and control of our children is a fundamental right, and there's a necessarily high burden for the state to limit that. The justifications that we've heard tonight for the in-school mandate are so weak. Just tell a parent which lab to go to, the same lab that's coming to the school, and tell them when, and they will go. This sounds more like a failure of planning and imagination, and now parents are expected to cede their authority to a bungling city administration. I don't need to hear from another person how easy the test is, how resilient the kids are. I don't care if it's Mickey Mouse doing the test. I am a parent, and no one at school, at soccer, at the park, at the doctor's office has the right to touch my child without mom or dad there to watch over them. And these are the concerns that I've heard from many, many parents in tears this week about being forced to sign that consent form, some even making the decision to go full remote, even though they know that that's not what's best for their child. Schools especially should not be normalizing any message to the contrary about who gets to do something to your body. It doesn't matter how invasive or not a procedure is. We're conditioning children to submit their bodies to the request of a stranger without the watchful eye and observable consent of their own parent or guardian. School phobia is already a real condition, and during these frightening times, masked and socially distanced children shouldn't be saddled with any more of an anxiety load inside the school building. Telling parents that a child who resists won't be forced to undergo testing is a joke. School is a place that operates under an ever-present requirement of compliance, and the children know it. It's a farce to suggest that children will feel comfortable going against what's asked of them, especially without the backup of their guardian. Those of us with means, like myself, can always throw their hands up. We can successfully navigate remote learning or escape the public school system completely, as thousands have done prior to this mandate and even more in the last week. But those parents who have spoken to me without the means to leave, without the social capital, or even without legal status, don't feel comfortable speaking up against the system they depend on. And now they're being held hostage to this abhorrent mandate with no recourse and no free choice. Parents of students with IEPs who already operate, as we know in this district, under fear of retribution from their schools and districts simply for advocating to get the services they're entitled to, are loath to speak up about this despite hating the idea of the testing and don't want yet another target on their backs. It's particularly shameful that this scare tactic is taking advantage of a public school population the DOE knows it can intimidate into compliance because they have no other feasible options. Now in New York City, your rights over your children are dependent on whether you can afford private school, and I'm disgusted by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana. You were well within your time. You didn't even need more than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have two more PTA representatives, Sophia Brackus first, and then Michael Lowe.
Hi, how are you? How is everyone? Thank you for giving me the floor to speak. I don't know that I'm going to be so eloquent as Diana, but thank you, Diana, for really, I want to piggyback off of you because, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I want to piggyback off of Diana because this was a tough week for me as a parent with with 3 children, 2 elementary and 1 in middle school who has not started classes yet, and that's extremely frustrating. But it was also a tough week for me because I was very reluctant to send my children to school. I didn't know which way to go with this, whether I should just make them fully remote because of this consent. You know, Diana said it beautifully, but just to piggyback, really taking the rights away from a parent is really the wrong way to approach this in a school setting where children have to be obedient and do all of the things that they're told, and to have now the children not know who's testing them, whatever the case may be. I will happily take my child to any test site and test them with being present. But without my presence, I adamantly oppose this idea, and it's not consent, it is coercion. We were forced to do so. And to have a consent sign that says, you know, if I'm going to consent, but I'm not allowed, or my hands are tied, it really just doesn't sit well at all. And I'm just really would want to say that, and I don't want to say more because it's just extremely frustrating and so upsetting.
I think,
Okay.
Sophia, were you done with your thoughts?
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you. And I appreciate your time. And I thank everyone for all their hard work. I hope that this is a resolution to this that can, you know, again, it's not that we oppose testing. Testing should happen. We need to keep everyone safe. That's not that's not what we're arguing about, or that's not what our concerns are. That's not what our fears are. That's not what the children are scared about. But parents need to be present when their children are being tested. Just the same way when a doctor is in there examining the child, we as parents are present. This is not okay.
Great. Thank you, Sophia.
Okay, next we have Freya Magnus. Let's see.
I see her.
Uh,
There you go. Yep, I think you're unmuted now, Fred.
I mean, honestly, I'm so proud of my PTA president, Diana Brogan. She did a great job saying exactly what I think most parents feel within our school. I'm glad to hear the district members being a little bit more vocal than this summer, listening over about consent forms.
Alice, you ask Freya,
I had to, I'm one of those parents who had
You
to
hear
go and move my child remote, which was a devastating move because I believe the social aspect of school is what is important to my child.
Freya, turn your video off.
She did
It might get a better feed.
Nobody can hear me.
It's slow. It's lagging.
Thumbs up.
It might be better if you turn off your video.
Her video is off.
Yep.
Now it is.
I think we last heard you when you were
Okay.
talking about how we're being
Is
more.
that better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
Okay. Is this better?
I don't think she can hear us.
Yes, that's better.
Okay, yes. So more vocal. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you. I hear you. My biggest issue is the city. If they took this serious, they would have everyone tested before they entered the building. I am one of the parents who have my child's immunization reports up to date. I vaccinate. I do whatever I need to do to protect my child. But what I will not do is give my rights over my child's body and sign a contract to the city to have that right. It is immoral. And I encourage you all to keep the fight going for parents who can't speak. I have a sister-in-law who must send her child into school at PS 185 because she has to work. And I'm fortunate that I get to stay home. And so now she has to sign the consent. To hear Jeff from the mayor's office saying parents are wanting to sign seems a little bit making the statistics work in his favor. Signing doesn't mean you're complacent with it, but parents are being forced to sign in order to have their kids in school to go back to work. So I really hope that you all keep fighting for parents' voices, which is not given to us during this pandemic. Don't be complacent with people taking our rights away. And it is pretty much immoral, I think, to teach our children in school that their body is theirs and now make that body signed over to the city as a contract. And so please fighting, Mrs. Doyle, you did a great job tonight. I appreciate it. And I could only hope, Joseph Brand, that you are a voice for parents within the district.
Great. Thank you, Freya.
And next we have Ellen Brown.
Great. Ellen.
Hi, thank you. First, I'd like to say it is very disappointing that the representative from the mayor's office is not here to listen to the voice of the parents so that he can relay our voice. And beyond that, I'd just like to say that I echo the opinion of Diana and Sophia and Freya, and I fully agree with what they said. So no need to repeat.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Natalia, who's next?
Okay, next we have Alexis Gillen. I hope I pronounced that right.
Hi, yes, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I have a few points that I'd like to make. The first being that what Diana and the other representatives stated, about us not consenting and being forced to test our children and send them to school. My other concern is, how are these, now that our representative from the mayor's office left, how are our concerns being brought to the mayor's office? Who is filtering this up right now from this meeting? Is this meeting being recorded that then can be viewed at a later date? My other concern is, are we truly getting 20% of the school's population? Because from what I've heard, that there are employees in the school that don't have to comply with testing. And how is that okay? If you're forcing our children to be tested, why isn't every employee in the building being forced to be tested? That's not okay. I'm a working parent. I don't have a choice. I have to send my child to school. And it brought me to tears this week to sign that over. So that's just not okay. And if the mayor's office and the chancellor's office are saying that testing is the answer, end all and be all, then why haven't they announced a date for high schools? If it's working for elementary and they have a date in mind for junior highs, why can't high schools be open? I have a high schooler who's been in school 1 day this year, 1 day. And how is that okay? She's missed her entire freshman year fall semester. So thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you, Alexis.
This is from Julia Hernandez through Facebook. Hello, Mr. Labella. On the matter of this mandatory testing, I believe that parents should have the right to take their kids to their private doctors. The ideas of tents outside so parents are present is great, but comes with the issue of a parent who cannot take off last minute because a child will be chosen at random for the day of testing. If children with disabilities can have the option to take testing at their doctors, why can't all students have that option? As a parent, many of our children may not have a diagnosed disability, but our children may not feel comfortable with a stranger taking the test. Students with no disabilities can also become traumatized or have sensitivity issues, and yet they are not given this option. Many things with testing needs to be viewed on the aspect of a children, not divide the normal children and the disabled children. I think that the view of the higher ups is that 3K and pre-K and kindergarten students don't get tested because they can be traumatized. Then this should also be viewed for all testing, little ones as well. I believe freedom of choice, not mandatory decisions for our kids with the notion of or else. And then she says, thank you for allowing parents to have this platform and voice. That's from Julia Hernandez.
Great.
Excuse me, Dina?
Yes.
Hi, I would just like to respond to the last comment regarding DOE employees not having to test. And I just wanted to share and to clarify, all teachers and paraprofessionals,
Nope.
if they refuse their test, they are sent home and lose the day's pay. They must go on an unpaid leave of absence if they feel strongly about not being tested. That's the current policy here at the Department of Education. So I just wanted to clarify that small matter.
Great. Thank you, Dr. O'Brien.
No problem.
Yeah, I want to move us quickly because I know some of us have to leave at 9 and we have the 2 resolutions to pull up and vote on. Thank you, parents, PTA members, and principals for sharing your insights with us.
We're going to discuss the testing one first. Sorry, Dina. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I think rather than go bullet by bullet, I think everyone had time to review this. Does anyone want to draw attention to one certain part of this for discussion? And if so, just tell Natalia and she'll scroll down.
I guess point of order, I did provide comments, so I'm not sure, is this the original one circulated or is this the one with the comment?
So Inga, this is the one that was submitted by the 48-hour deadline. So this was the one that got posted for the public to say. But I wanted to say that I did get the feedback. And so there's some changes I wanted to suggest to this just right off the bat, which were to replace the beginning with the resolution that we actually call on, let me see where it is. That we call on Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, Chancellor Carranza, and community leaders rather than what we have written now. That was one change that I think makes sense. And let's see, and there's also a suggestion to remove whereas 14, which had to do with Governor Cuomo talking about positivity rates. and also to change the resolved intro to Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, Chancellor Carranza, and community leaders again. So those are the main issues.
So, right, so the first one was as Simeon mentioned, just, the resolution calling upon governor, mayor, chancellor, and also testing program, let's just write NYC schools, right? Because we're talking about NYC schools throughout, I think. Point 5, also, I think we mean NYC DOE versus just DOE, unless I misunderstood. Because we reference NYC DOE in many cases, but then
You're
here,
right.
Yes.
okay.
Yep, that
So
should be NYC.
Yeah, so there I would just add that. On point 11, that talks about whereas some parents in District 20, especially those with children in grades, I think should be 1 through 5, right? Because the 3K, they're not requiring testing on them.
What about pre-K?
They're not requiring testing.
Okay,
It's only
yeah.
1 through 5.
So not on kindergarten either. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was just trying to focus on the younger kids.
What about if they make, what about who's to guarantee that they're not going to require 3K or kindergarten or pre-K in the future? It doesn't hurt us to put it in.
That's true. I don't know. I think it's a semantics.
That's fine. I'm not that if you want to leave it in, that's fine. I was just linking it to what the requirement is. But yeah, I'm fine with that, Vito.
That's good to know, though, Linda. I didn't know they weren't testing little ones.
Yeah, it's just 1 through 5. I think it was the next one that I had suggested to delete. I guess my numbers are all so moreover, to date, many New York City parents have not demonstrated their willingness to sign consent forms, and it links to like Gothamist. So that's the one I kind of didn't really think it adds much. It doesn't really speak to our district. It's also from, I don't know where they got their numbers from. I guess they say they got it from the DOE. But
I think they're pretty widely cited numbers. I've seen them in other articles. And I think they speak to the fact that parents have not consented in large numbers. And we don't know why. We don't know it's because they don't want to. We don't know if they just didn't know about it. We don't know what the obstacle is. But the fact is only 1/3 of parents before this have actually consented to do this. So
I know, but I guess in my mind, that as I was reading it anyway, it kind of took me away from what we were resolving to ask. Like the question that popped up in my mind was, well, what does this mean or matter, frankly, because I think as many parents mentioned, it's not that they're opposed to the testing, right? They just want to be present.
Does having this item in here prevent you from supporting this resolution?
I would just, like a clean resolution, frankly.
Actually,
and you'll figure out, I guess, if I oppose or don't when I vote.
Just a point of order, which whereas are we talking about right now? I'm not seeing it.
It's 11.
11.
But
Okay.
I would say, and I bet Steve could find the actual source, or even Simeon. Between the two of you, I'm sure we can get the primary source on that. But I think it is important because even as Jeff was speaking, there seemed to be something disingenuous in saying how overtly enthusiastic parents are about signing these consent forms, when this shows that that's not necessarily the case.
Just a point of order on the consent form. Is that just for District 20 that a lot of parents are not signing it, or is that citywide? Because obviously when the New York City DOE makes these decisions, they can't base it on our district specifically.
Citywide.
Okay.
That came out in the original.
Okay, I just was clarifying. Thank you.
Yeah, I know we have a difficult, no, what you're saying, Alice. But I'm for keeping it in if we could find the original source.
Okay. So then I guess 13, I don't know, I think I just rejiggered the order of certain things here. And then in terms of what we're asking for under 15, again, we need to address the governor, chancellor, and whatnot, and local leaders. And two of the additions were, okay, so after point 1, I think it was to allow families of students who are randomly selected to take their child. You know what? I just moved the order basically. So I moved that to point 2. That point 3 is testing at other locations will not be accommodated, or if schools cannot establish a means to provide the opportunity for parents who wish to participate via direct link using Zoom and Google Meets. Is that there right now?
Natalia, can you scroll down? Yeah. Yeah, Zoom, Google Meets, Teams
Okay.
is listed.
And then ensure that school staff who are known to students and parents be present during all COVID-19 testing within the school building. Is that there?
That's number 4. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we note anywhere in the whereas about the coercive value of a consent form that holds an if then solution for parents? If you don't, then this will happen, which suggests more coercion than, as the PTA presidents had suggested, than actual consent. And do we find that to be problematic? I know I do. I find it to be problematic that it's not a legitimate consent form when you are doing it either or.
Wait, which number is this, Adele?
Well, I'm not sure. Is it there? Did I read that correctly? Is it in there?
Whereas is to see if that's listed.
As the coercive value of the consent form.
Can I speak to that for just a second since we're
Sure.
discussing it? I mean, I know where you guys are coming from. I just feel like I've said this before, but there is a choice. The choice is not to go to school in person. And I know that's not a feasible choice for a lot of people, but you know, like 750,000 people are figuring it out, how to keep their kids home. I just feel like a choice does exist. It's not, you know, you're not being, the only people who are being deprived in education, and I said this over email, are the children who do not have devices that are being coerced, because if they don't go to school, they don't get an education. But for the rest of us, our children are receiving an education. It's not perfect, but no one is making our children go back into the buildings. And I know it's not a popular opinion and I don't want to debate it. I just kind of want to put it on the record. Thanks, everybody.
I understand, Alice, and not to be debated, but just to restate the parents' perspective, particularly parents with that don't see this as a choice, especially when they do have obligations that they must meet. And again, I don't think it's for me to decide what a parent considers to be a choice, because I'm not in their circumstances and I don't know what they're experiencing at home. So for me, I think it's important, if we are to represent all of our parents, to, especially since 3 different PTA presidents did specify that this qualify as coercion.
Okay, well, that's again, that's their opinion. We have ours, and I respect their opinion. I'm not shooting it down. I would, though, just to speak to that really quickly, you know, as we're elected officials and parents come to us to have their concerns heard, let's not be shy about contacting our own elected officials. Part of the reason that we are being, you know, coerced, AKA, into sending our children to school, because we have no choice, because our leaders aren't giving us a choice. You know, we're not getting our stimulus bill. We need to be calling our legislators. We need to be constantly advocating for resources from our government during this pandemic. They gave us $1,200 in April and they told us to have a nice day. And I mean, people shouldn't be having to choose between sending our children to maybe a potentially dangerous school building and to have a test that they don't maybe want their child to have to consent to, or eating. That's a ridiculous choice. So while we reach out to us as elected leaders, and as parents do that, let's encourage everyone to reach out to your actual elected leaders that make budgets and force us into these untenable situations where we have to make these choices.
Adele, to go to your point that whereas is not there, I think that that is a change that, you know, is more substantive. Inga had ones that I think we can agree to add after voting, but that one we would need to agree to add, I think, if it would prevent people from.
I would like to put it on the table and see if we could have support for this, particularly since we heard from PTA presidents who this is an issue for. Inga, is there a way to word that in a way? Simeon, is there a way to word something in there? Because there is a legality issue when you're presented with a consent form deemed to be voluntary, and then you're offered a coercive outcome. You know, you don't get this if you don't do this. That's really not. And you shouldn't have to choose. You shouldn't have to say, okay, my child needs to be in person. It's not the same thing. Being in person and being at home is not the same type of education, or make this not. I mean, so for parents to say that, I just feel like it needs to be there.
The only way I can support that being put in is if we tie it directly to the children who do not have devices, because it is really only them who are being coerced. Otherwise, I can't support the resolution with that language. That's just me. Please, everyone else, speak up.
Simeon, you might be able to figure this out. Can you think of a wording?
Can I speak? I would not support that in the resolution. In fact, I'm going to vote against the resolution, given the overarching current that this represents, not just in the district, but in the city. I'm a CUNY professor. If I found out that my union to my administration agreed that we go back into the classroom where there wasn't a robust testing apparatus, I would go on strike. We're part of a community. And what we're doing here is that we're advancing the interests of individuals in a society where the idea that we have choice is actually quite constrained because we need to protect each other. That's how choice actually works. Alice said it best. People have a choice. You could be part of the almost 3/4 of parents who are now home, remote learning, right? Or if you go to the school facilities, I'm sorry, but the teachers, the principals, the counselors, the janitors have a right to and each other. Our kids have an absolute right as workers to protect themselves. Our speaker, I had many issues, many questions with our speakers that came earlier today. And I didn't get every answer that I wanted. I was concerned about the translation issue. But in terms of the validity of the test, that was the right answer. And that is, if we allow parents to go to the local H&H testing site, right, where which is already a non-random sample, right, because people who go there are more likely to have symptoms. You're compromising. First of all, we're compromising our own health. Second, you're compromising your own study. So if I'm using that statistic, negative or positive test, and throwing it into my sample when that testing has been done under different conditions, I don't have a sample. That's not a valid test. That is why it's important to have that point in time test to ensure that replicability and to ensure that validity and to protect each other. So I appreciate, and Simeon, I appreciate what you've tried to do here today. I'm sorry that you've run 4 times and you haven't been elected, and I felt that I want to send you solidarity. And we have, one of the things I appreciate about you is how we respectfully agree to disagree, and I appreciate your effort here in doing so. But I wanted to just say that I will not be supporting this resolution in general. Thank you.
Okay, just to clarify.
So Adele, you have to get
point of order. Oh, sorry.
And maybe other people. I'm sorry. We just have a 9:30 hard stop, and I know Inga has to go too.
But it's misstating. It's misstating what I'm asserting. I can't.
I'm sorry.
I can't make a move for. I asked for a move for something, but it's being misstated. That's not what I'm asking for, and I just wanted to be clear so everybody understands what's being asked for.
So are you asking for the language of coercion to be put in?
So in the sense that parents are not rejecting the testing itself, they're rejecting not being able to be present. As worded, this consent form is coercion. If they had worded where parents could be present. Okay. Secondly, we do not represent the UFT, we represent the parents. Okay, and I appreciate that. Nobody is saying not to be tested. You can be tested on site. Measures can be taken to be tested on site where parents can be present. That's what I'm asking for. As worded, this is coercion. There's nothing that says we're talking about not testing, Alan.
I think that what we need to do, because we can, we're having more of a discussion. We need to suggest the amendments we want to make and then vote on them and then vote on the amendment. So.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll just make a point of order, I guess, if I may. I think, Adele, to that point, though we don't use the word coercion, item 11 does speak to that exact point, that parents have expressed that they're uncomfortable with medical procedures being conducted on their children outside of their presence, right? I think that's really the main kind of point, frankly, in my opinion, of why we're doing this resolution, is what we've heard from parents, particularly as stated in point 11. I mean, I'd be fine with, signing off on this resolution, frankly. I think it's very important to have this come across to the elected officials in this form, given everything we've heard individually as a council from parents and even, during public speaking.
Dina, I'm sorry, I would support that.
Yeah. Sorry, Adele, I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Just to keep things moving. I appreciate that point, Inga. As stated, I would support the resolution.
Fantastic.
Request to be recognized?
Simeon was before, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go.
Simeon, Vito.
I was just going to suggest that maybe this is sort of way to thread the needle, which is in whereas 11, if we just add to that first sentence, and some feel that the consent policy is coercion. And all we're basically saying is that some parents in our district have expressed this, and we are reflecting what some of the parents in our district are saying.
I'm not comfortable with the word coercion. I'm not going to vote for it if it's in there. I mean,
Sorry, I wanted Steve to jump in. He wants to chime in on the process so we can keep it. And then Vito, sorry.
Yeah, sorry to cut line there. I think maybe since there's a couple items that Inga proposed that didn't seem to be controversial to most of the council, I would vote on those to just get them in here. And then if there are more controversial ones, make the motion to amend those and then vote on it. If like discussion can happen, but if you want to try to move it along, that would be my advice.
Great. So why don't we vote on Inga's changes, get them in. So does someone want to make a motion, or I don't really.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll motion to vote on the changes I just suggested.
I second.
Third.
Great.
Just I want to confirm that Natalia is all straight on those changes, just the little housekeeping ones, and we know.
Well, I think we should send them. I think Inga should send them back to Natalia.
Okay.
I'm sure we have them.
Sure. And Simeon, I'll work with you. We'll make sure we have the right changes in there.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. No opposed. Fantastic. So I think the other point we just want to discuss, and then I think, Vito, you go ahead. Right?
I was actually going to make a motion that we vote on this before we go on to the next resolution.
Yeah. Okay.
So only that Adele's question about the number 11, whereas is the only thing that we're putting on the table for now. If you guys decide to amend it, Adele, again, if you want to make these changes, you have to have the language ready.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. It was just,
just based on in the future, like just have it ready.
Well, it wasn't for me. It was based on what parents said today.
Okay.
So that, to be fair, that was reflecting what our parents told us.
Great. Does anyone second Vito's motion to vote for the resolution?
I do. Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Can you vote on the resolution as a roll call?
Yes.
But this is the vote. This is the vote to proceed with the vote.
Vote to vote.
Yes. Vote to vote. Right.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, you can do it.
So Natalia's going to call us roll call and tell us the name of the resolution we're voting on and everything. Natalia, please.
Okay, so this is the resolution on COVID-19 testing in schools. So Dina Gerges.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment. I think we heard from parents who feel strongly one way. I just want to be a voice for a parent who sends their kids to school for blended and their kids have gotten tested, my kids without incident, and I appreciate the testing program and the way it's been implemented. But I also will support this resolution because I understand it is important to parents in our district. And so I vote yes.
Okay. Robert Aguilar.
I don't vote in favor of this resolution, so I won't vote for it.
Abstain or no?
I'm not voting for this resolution, no.
Okay, that's abstain.
No, wait.
No,
That's
it's a no.
That's
No, this is a no.
Just for
Okay.
clarity, guys, after you do your explanation, let's just say yes or no.
Or abstain.
Right, or abstain. Thanks.
Okay. Alice Licato.
Because Simeon added my extra asks so that we prioritize the testing of the older students over testing of students in grades 1 through 5, and that we took out the part about requiring school staff to actually perform the test, not just be present. I understand that this is what a lot of parents in our community would like, and as long as we respect our unions, I will vote yes in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Inga Smolyar.
Yes, I support it.
Okay. Alan Aha.
I vote no.
Mauricia Cadillo.
Yes.
Yifeng Chen.
With edited change by Inga, I will vote yes to this resolution.
Okay. Adele Doyle.
Yes.
Okay. Rita Labella.
I want to just thank all the parents who've spoken tonight. I assure them that I listen to their voice, and if I don't personally agree or disagree, sometimes as long as an ask is reasonable, I will support every single parent who has a reasonable ask, and I vote yes.
Okay. Simeon Stolzberg.
Yes.
Okay. Steve Stowe.
Yes.
Okay. There'll be 9 yeses and 2 nos.